My name is Aisha S1. I am a first-generation Pakistani Canadian, a single mom of 3 kids, and a recent university grad. Between my medical challenges, trying to start a new career, and welcoming my mother into my home, I have spent a lot of time navigating the ups and downs of life. It is through the vulnerable conversations I have had with my friends and family that I have come to realize the importance of compassion to get through life's challenges. I invite you to join the conversation, laugh with us, share with us, and realize the one truth that unites us. We may think we are alone in our struggles, but together, one conversation leads to the next. And this is where we find hope, humor, and healing on the Gen Xperience with Aisha. So today we're talking about the Canadian immigrant dream and whether that applies to you or whether that applies to your parents. I think that there's a lot of challenges and conflicts that come with that. Particularly, I can say that when my dad first came to Canada and when I was born here and could hear him talking about Canada, he loved Canada and he loved that it was the land of opportunity. But the things that he didn't like was the very different value set that Canada had from Pakistan. So he was all about, why is there so much liberalism here? Why are women doing this? And why is this happening? And why is this happening? I remember constantly hearing that. And he was never worried about religion. He was more worried about cultural values. So I wanted to ask you guys, we can start over here. Where did your parents immigrate from, and what were the things about Canadian culture that they absolutely didn't like and that they spoke about at home?
We came from Vietnam in 1979. I think, my dad's biggest challenge was on how children were raised and what was allowed and what was. I think the biggest thing I always remember is obviously mannerism, like how you speak to an adult, to an outside, how to, no matter what the situation, you never disrespect an elderly, no matter what they say or do to you. So a lot of it spared from like manners, workmanship, just how communication. Mm-hmm. But there was obviously a lot of other stuff. But he definitely had, always felt like he was never given a chance, so he had to push his way to have a chance. He had to almost demand it. So he taught us young not to take no as don't have many no's before you take it. Until you know that you can't get a yes or until you get a yes, right? So I think that was
one of the challenges. What about your mom coming here and raising kids and having a household and such?
I think it was super scary. I think my parents always we didn't know any English when we came, so it was drawing. They always tell me the story. Went from the camp, like obviously the boat to Hong Kong camp for 9 months. And then from there we went, like the refugee camp, we went to Edmonton for a month, came to Calgary, and we were in Calgary housing right away in Shaganappy. And she always says my 2 older brothers and I were just in the corner, like crying and scared. We were super scared. This was like, to them, it was like this huge opportunity, but we were just terrified. And the first time that a sponsorship came and they couldn't speak, there was a translator, but even that, the translator, there wasn't that clarity. So we were drawing things. My dad was a beautiful artist, so he would draw, like we would go to Safeway, I guess, and because Safeway was over the bridge at Westbrook, and he would draw chicken and eggs and everything. And then my mom, but in all that, I think my parents realized just how beautiful Canadian people were, like how embracing when they got a chance to know each other. Like my mom talks about our sponsors all the time, battling through that and still like wanting to hang out with our family, even though not being able to communicate. So there was huge challenges, but there was a lot of great people that came our way. So like my parents are very big and help as many people as you can. And don't worry about why, just because of their own experience.
Wow, that's amazing. Yeah. Rupi, how about your parents?
Well, my dad came to Canada when he was 17 from India.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So he was one of the youngest of his family to leave. And so he had to come here and really, like most immigrants that immigrate here, really needed to prove himself and work very, very hard and assimilate to the Canadian culture. So he had to give up a lot of the things that he was used to. Like, for example, when he moved to Canada, he wore a turban. Mm-hmm. So he had to give that up because he wanted to be not seen as so different, right? So that was, I think for them, it was hard giving up the things that they were used to. So when, a few years later, he went back to India, married my mom, and she came, I think it was like 1973, she came to Canada. And I think as they're raising their kids, they're realizing that they're kind of stuck too, because they want to belong to this Canadian culture, and yet they want to hold on to their heritage and their traditional values and things that they've grown up with. So growing up as a child, a lot of that was imposed on us, right? So they're trying to give you your freedom to do things, but I think they were really scared. And out of the fear, there's a lot of restrictions and things that they put on us growing up. So looking back, I can see where they were coming from a lot more as an adult, whereas much as it sucked going through that at the time. Yeah. So I think it was really challenging for them.
Yeah.
How
about you, Ken?
I think Rupi kind of nailed it there. Like there is, my father came here in the 60s. I think he was in his mid-20s. And it was the land of opportunity for sure. When he landed, he wasn't even sure where to go, what to do, where to start really. And he saw a sign, help wanted, it was up north. Mm-hmm. And it was up on a Syncrude plant up in Fort McMurray. He wasn't a welder or anything like that. He kind of fibbed his way into the point where he could write a test to go and do that. And he wrote the little welding test and he passed it. He just crammed. He wasn't a welder. So he started welding and he was loving it. And slowly he sponsored a couple of his brothers. So they started having a little bit of a community here with a couple of his brothers here and their wives and children and whatnot. But the fear factor, they wanted what they perceived as the goodness that came from this wonderful country, right? They were all outdoorsy kind of people, the flowing water, the politics was very important, how good it was over here. But that fear of the unknown, right? So there was lots of restrictions on all the children. I think they tried to herd us all together just to keep in that one group so we don't maybe branch out and learn something wrong or something like that. But it was very diverse because we're going to school here, right? I was born and raised in Edmonton, matriarch, but then to live under that was quite a challenge. You don't know exactly what's right and what's wrong. You go to school for 8 hours of the day and you come home and it's a whole different regime as when you were in school. Like I was out of fear, they said I couldn't be home late. I had to be the late bus was as late as I could be. There was no sleepovers or anything like that. So I understand, Rupi, like you said, where they're coming from. It's a fear thing. There's a little bit of ripple effect then from that though, right? So you got to salute, and I think any immigrant family, they start first, those pioneers who land here. I mean, it's shock and awe, right? Especially, I guess if you were coming from London and going to New York, it's different. It's not as shocking. But coming perhaps from a third world country here, and in the 70s, in the late 60s, it's a different planet. So I think the fear factor, I mean, they did well, whatever, but the fear factor was very difficult. And I think whoever's holding the keys in their hand has to make that call of how they're going to try to operate this. And that was their call. And it was lots of restrictions and try to stay in your own little group and whatnot. And then there's challenges to that. So,
And Chico, when you immigrated here, did you find that you were going through certain challenges of trying to acclimate, or did you have a pretty good understanding of what Western culture was? I know that you landed in the dead of winter, which is one of the worst things in the world. You went from the hottest spot in the world, and then you come to one of the coldest spots. What was that like, and how did you interpret that?
So yeah, I did have a good appreciation of the Western culture before I left. But there's one thing when you visit the West, and then there's living in the West. I didn't realize how expensive it is to live here. That was a big shock. So many things that you just, I don't know, maybe we get affected by movies. Maybe we just, the way we see things in the movies, we think that's the way life is over there. I don't think there was too much of a culture shock for me, but a few things that my children would always say. And it was small little things, like, for example, where I come from, a human gives way to a vehicle. There is no vehicle that is stopping for you to cross the road. No, that's not happening. You know that. And so my children, so they stop for us? And I'm like, yeah. And I had been to the US back and forth many times, so I knew about things like that. And for them, it was quite a shock. So the car stops and I cross the road. I'm like, yeah. Then they started even taking it for granted. They wouldn't even check for vehicles. They'll just go. And I say to them, if that person is busy texting or something and they hit you, even if insurance pays you, but your legs are gone. So you need to understand that. Don't take that for granted. And another thing was, one of the first things, my daughter was 13 then, one of the first things she said was, why are Canadians so nice? She couldn't believe it. How somebody would just smile at you. We came here and, like you're saying, in the dead of winter, and some lady, we just met her somewhere. She said, I know you don't know about this place. I'm taking you shopping. And she bought us $400 worth of winter clothes.
Oh,
Wow.
Just like that.
Nice.
And my kids could not understand that somebody can just do that and they don't even know you, So that was a big thing for us. Just people on the street are just different. That was quite a big thing.
Yeah. And do you guys think that, in my opinion, when our parents came in the 70s or 60s, there were no communities established here? There were no South Asian stores. There was no clothing stores. There was no spice stores. So that made the transition so much harder. What would your thoughts be on that?
Yeah, there was, for Vietnamese, there was only Chinatown really at the time that I can remember. The community, I think around just after 79, like towards the 80s, more Vietnamese people came, because at one point you couldn't leave Vietnam, right?
Yeah.
And 79 was when Chinese Vietnamese people were pretty much invited to leave. If you had any Chinese background, you were invited to leave pretty much, right? So it wasn't until like later on that you saw more of that. But yeah, it was just like Chinatown was like exciting to go to because it was the only place you can go get Asian food at that time.
Yeah. And what about the religious institutions? Was there no community out of there, or was there, they just didn't even exist?
No, I think like my parents, I remember like a lot of people coming to our house, and it was like, I think there was like that refugee camp, so that around the same time. So that's the group that stuck together, right? So till this day, like those, my parents' friends, other kids are my friends still to this day, right? So a lot of them are. But yeah, so that's kind of how it started. At one point, it was a small community, and then became like pretty much even now, like most of from North Vietnam, like where we come from, you pretty much know everybody even still, right?
Right.
Yeah. So.
But there's a community now that's established and all that sort of stuff.
So the community was a lot smaller, and it's definitely grown, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. But like everybody starts to like, their hometown people come, and then everybody starts to meet each other, right? So there was definitely, I think before there was a lot more efforts because that's all you really had. Yeah. You didn't branch out.
Yep.
You didn't really have a way. But then I think my dad's super outgoing. Everybody loved him, very friendly. He can speak like everybody's language. He's like, he probably say 20 words in your language, 20 words in your language. Like he has a photogenic memory, so he would just bust out stuff. So I remember maybe sometime in the mid 80s, I was probably like still really young. He would have, we were in Calgary housing. It was like, the cement basement. My dad threw parties. So he had a man named Cowboy. I remember his name was Uncle Cowboy.
Okay.
And he would come with a band and have big parties at our house.
Wow.
And it wasn't that big, but yeah, so he definitely invited a lot into our family. And then being eventually got his mechanic license, but he failed multiple times because of the English of it. But he's incredibly smart. But it was trying to translate that from Vietnamese to English. You almost have to self-taught yourself. Now you have way more, there's way more out there for you,
Yeah.
right? Even 10 years after we were here, but during that time, you had to go get it for sure.
Yeah.
You had to put the extra in.
I think one of the advantages to not having a community when you land in this country was that it forced our parents to branch to other cultures that kind of had the similar value sets. And so that created kind of a morphed sort of community. So I remember my dad in Pakistan, India, they play cricket. That's their thing. They all play cricket. So I remember my dad started a cricket team because he wanted to somehow connect with his own culture, with the sport that he loved so much. And I remember the cricket team had everybody on there, people from Bangladesh, India, and Pakistan. And they were a great group and they had a lot of fun. And they relied on each other a lot. And of course, now you have all these separate little communities, so you don't have that that commonality or that need to kind of get out of your own religion or whatever your culture is and go and reach out even to India, Pakistan that are so similar. There was still that sort of barrier. You know what I mean? So I think that that was one of the advantages to not landing into an already established community. But I can't. That's for Calgary, Edmonton. But I can't speak to BC. Did you have sort of a similar? Did your parents have the similar issues, or did they start the community themselves, or how did they go about doing that?
I think they stayed. I remember them being more just within the Indian community, to be honest.
Okay.
Just because they would go to like the Gurdwara, which is our temple, and a lot of the families that were there were all kind of, you see the same people. Like every Sunday you go, you see the same people. So they really started making little friendships with these people. And then if they knew somebody that had immigrated to Canada and they were in the area and they knew that they were from their village back home, they would reach out to them. And I remember them being a lot more social when I was younger, because I think they needed that. They needed that.
Yeah.
To keep those connections with people. It's almost like, oh my God, you're one of us. Oh, come here,
Yeah.
And they didn't want to let that go.
Yeah. That's why I think too, my dad always
Right?
had people over and parties, but because it was so dark in between, right? It's a big thing leaving your whole world like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And to a very foreign situation. Like no one else was here. Like we came here. Now everybody after, like my parents brought them, right? But like at that time we were sponsored by like a church in oil and gas or whatever. It wasn't like a family friend or your brother sponsoring you. So it's like, it's super scary.
Yeah. And would you say, Cam, that having community here made it easier as for a transition?
I don't think there was much integration because my father sponsored his two brothers and they came with their kids. So that was kind of the group. It was a bit of a group. So I personally didn't see much integration of other nationalities or the neighbors coming over or anything like that. I didn't see that. I didn't see that. It was pretty much that core group of those brothers and their family for the longest time. So I didn't really see that integration, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But I mean, their call, right?
Right.
So, I was gonna say, Chico, that I lived here all my life and you still have more friends than me. I was holding on to that when you said that. You're still doing better than I. So.
Maybe you isolated yourself and went to live somewhere else where people couldn't find you, maybe?
Yeah, I'd love to live off the grid.
Oh,
I would.
you see that. Hard to make friends over there, isn't it?
But I'll tell you something. I was born in Edmonton, lived here all my life, and went through this. Are the folks accepted? Are they accepting this culture? Are they accepting this, accepting that? Am I accepted here? I actually visited the Middle East once, a couple times, and I was not accepted there. I thought it was weird. I'm like, oh, a bunch of brown people. This should be cool. It was not the case. It was not the case. I was singled out very quickly that you're not from around here. and you're not going to mingle well. I was told that many times, that I just don't fit into that world. That was a real curveball, I guess. So.
And was that because you weren't trying to fit in, or was that just because you were being who you were, and this is what the reception of that was?
For sure, like, I'm hard to swallow.
No matter
what culture you are.
But maybe it also comes from, like you're saying, your dad didn't really let other people in, right? It was just like your family and stuff. I think that makes a big difference, because I see the difference shift in my friends and my family life, where my dad invited so much into our life, like all kinds, right? And so in the early days, we were already doing a lot of like very Canadian adapted things, where their friends weren't even going near that. Even till this day, they don't like Canadian food, right?
Oh.
Right. So I think it's how you're exposed to right away too, right? Like if your parents weren't doing that, like we're little and we just remember like there would be random people in my house all the time.
I hear you. I will strike up a conversation with a stump. Like I can, right?
Yeah.
But I found there was no stumps in the Middle East that wouldn't want to really chat it up with me.
Yeah.
Yeah. I found that very interesting when I went there, that I wasn't really accepted. I wasn't really accepted there. And there was a bit of a line that was drawn, you know. And I guess that made me wonder a lot for my first 30 or so years of my life, is where do I fall in here? I was born and raised here. Sometimes I felt racism way back. But then when I went and visited the Middle East, I felt racism there too. So it was really, it's a strange one. But I think it's that landed immigrant, first generation, and then that next generation, you have a much smoother transition. Path. Like my children, they will not be exposed to those kind of things, right? So it's just going through that, and I think you have to accept that. Like people coming from that first group that lands here, of immigrants, there's going to be struggles, and then with their children, raising their children in this environment, there's going to be struggles. But then if you get through that and you get to that second generation, I think it's a lot more smooth sailing. I mean, look at all your children. Everybody's
that's the whole point of why we do this. I think,
just
right?
a wicked melting
Better
pot.
versions,
you don't see color, you don't see race, you don't see religion, you don't see any of that, right? But it took a generation or two to weave that all together, I think. Where in the beginning, there's a little bit of resistance. So
But it's like Chico was saying, when you said Nina went back, she saw the differences immediately.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And did you feel that the kids felt that there was differences in the way people treated them now that they had been in Canada, and I don't know how they would identify as Canadian or...
Okay, so let me put it this way. I was born in Malawi, grew up, and I left in my early teens and went to Zimbabwe and stayed there until my 20s, and then moved to South Africa, and then now I'm in Canada. Now, the reason I'm giving you that backstory is because, but to your point, Cam, in South Africa, we were never accepted. In as much as it's an African country, everybody looked like me. Well, the majority of people looked like me, but South Africa has got a lot of languages, and it's the only place in the world where I have seen two people conversing, but they're speaking different languages. So I am stuck to my language. I'm not learning yours. I understand it, but I'm not speaking it.
Right.
So now when I get there as a foreigner and I'm speaking English, now that is a language that most people did not want to you know, they didn't like that. You are black, why are you not speaking any one of our languages?
Right.
You know? So to your point of not being accepted in an environment where you expect that you all look like me, you know, well, how is this hard, you know? So there was that aspect. And that's why the shock now when we came here, where the majority of people don't look like us, but everyone has got so many questions. They want to help you, you know. I spoke about the lady who went and bought us a lot of winter clothing. even furniture. Somebody would just hear that our neighbors were staying in this complex with townhouses. Somebody would knock, I heard you guys just moved here. I have these side tables, maybe you could use them. Oh, things like that. And before I knew it, I was donating furniture because I had so much of it. I was here 2 months.
Yeah,
I was donating furniture.
That is
And
so
there
nice.
was some family that was moving back to the Caribbean at some point, and they heard we just moved here. They had all this furniture and storage. I got a call. Please come and get whatever you want. Before I could even get, they were like, there's a truck coming to deliver the stuff. My kids were like, how?
Yeah.
Because we had lived 12 years that side, all their childhood with this hostility of why don't you speak our language? And it was easier for me because I can speak too many languages, but my kids couldn't speak the South African languages. So they would always rely on English, but that was hard. That was hard. So yes, they would pick things like that up. My daughter 2 months ago said to me, what was that organization that gave us furniture? When I start working, I want to donate money to them. So they picked those things up 5 years ago when we came here, that the dynamics are different. Somehow, this is a very welcoming country, even when we would go to a different city, go to a different province, just people are just interested in talking to you. People are just nice. And that's actually amazing. You would hear that Canadians are nice, but not as much as when you come here and experience it, like, this is not real. Like, there's a catch somewhere. You're not furnishing my house. There's you're furnishing my house. I have 2 beds now. I have to give away one, things like that. It was just amazing for us. Really, the Canadian dream, we lived it on arrival. We could not believe the reception we got.
Awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah, it was just amazing. And somebody, coincidentally, now I'm talking a lot, but let me share. We met just, through simple things like school. The kids go to the same school. One parent just hears there's this single woman with her 2 kids, and I'll just get a call. Oh, my son made friends with your son. Can you guys come over for dinner? Things like that. That was just amazing. Yeah.
So would you say that regardless of paperwork or anything, that do your kids identify as being Canadian?
Oh, they love being Canadian.
Yeah.
We love being Canadian. I guess because of the statement, home is where the heart is. Where you feel welcome, where you feel accepted. Honestly, in as much as the majority of people here may not look like me, but I don't think I have felt at home so much as I do here than anywhere, and I've lived in many countries. It's just without it, I know it's not home, right? But I really am at peace. I think that the term is peace, yes. We do identify so much because we're at peace, because of the reception we got here.
Well, and what about you guys? Yourselves, I know that your kids would identify as Canadians, but would you guys say that you are Canadian?
Yes,
For sure.
100%.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And so,
I definitely do keep like certain traditions for sure. Like I love having the 2, but I grew up, I think I was fortunate in that when we came, we had like really good people with different cultural background. And a lady named Charlotte was from the church, and she had heard about my family and just came over. And after that, she never left. Pretty much, she never left our life. And after my dad, my kids were, all of us were calling her Charlotte. My dad said it's rude to call somebody who is so respectful, so caring. You guys need to start calling her auntie. So they called her over for dinner and said, is it okay if our kids call you Auntie Charlotte? And then she's like, oh, I would love that. And then my grandma passed away. This is a few years after we got here. And my grandma, so Charlotte came over and said, now that your mom has passed away, and I see your kids as my grandkids.
Wow.
I see you and your wife as my children. And she has never married. She passed away at 62 when I was 12. She was no family pretty much died a virgin, gave her life to God, and we were kind of part of it for her. So long story short, we started to call her Grandma Charlotte. So she she said, I'd like to adopt you as my son and your children to call me Grandma. And so because of her, I've raised my kids in so many great cultural ways. And we used to always invite people over to our house and make turkey and all the French traditions that she had. And everyone is like, how in the world do you guys know how to make this stuff?
Yeah.
And just so many things. Putting us in piano and dance and all those things, we wouldn't have known to do that. My parents wouldn't. It would have took them years before that. And then right away I had kids. That's what we do right away. So there's so many great things that she adapted for us. And in my dad, like trying to get his license, and she was the one always like, you need to have your own business. You have way too many kids to go work for somebody. So she put that on him. So he put that on his children. You know, my brother now owns Cobb's Bakery. I have my own business, and I feel like my brother and I both keep on doing it because my dad didn't get to do it well. You know, my dad operated out of his heart, so he really didn't know how to make or keep the money in his business. So he wasn't a real great businessman, but he was so good at operating with people. Yeah. So anyways, long story short, it's just all of that journey leads up to now and how we get to raise our kids. So being in the, I think for my family coming into Calgary in Canada, like just being trusting of people. And that was the hardest part, I think. Trusting that their intentions are good. Intentions are good. So this is why even when my dad passed, like 22 of his family members laid with him before he passed. And he said to everyone, like being in that much pain, he made sure he talked to every single one of us and was like, help as many people as you can. Whatever you do, like you be a dentist, be a doctor, be whatever, like do help as many people and don't worry about the return. Because like the return was so great. And my dad said if he never came here, he would never know that. Because it's a different survival back home, right? Especially back then.
Absolutely.
Especially being, his father was Chinese. He was extremely smart, got kicked out of university. He had no future. So he had to become something he didn't want to make survival for his family. So his only choice was to come here.
That's incredible.
And the path was just so amazing, the people that we've seen. And yeah, there's bad things that happen in between, but when you get impacted like that so quickly, too, like you said, like she came here a couple months, the same thing with us. Like we had it was St. Michael's Church, Father Joe, his name was, and he rode his 10-speed bike or 12-speed bike to our house every day, and then he go back to the church and talk about this amazing Vietnamese family. And all of a sudden, there was just always people around us, and and we were not even Catholic or anything, and she brought us into that life in that church. And I remember my mom was like, I don't want to kneel down. What do I need to kneel down for? And my dad's like, we prayed to Buddha. And then my grandma would ask him things, and they didn't really have there was really no community in that way either. So there's just been an incredible journey.
Your dad passed here in Canada?
My dad passed here, yeah. He 7 years ago next month, he had liver cancer. But my dad, like everybody always called my dad Bruce Lee. Like he was strong. He like was muscular and everything. Like he was super strong till the day he died. He was super strong. He didn't even take he didn't want to take morphine. They had to, once they injected him, he passed away that night because he was not taking anything because he was so worried about being addicted. He's like, he read or saw a video of somebody being addicted to morphine and they didn't know their family and their children. He was holding on to that, right? Very strong-minded man, like incredible. Like till the day he fell in the morning the day he died because he did not want anyone to take him to the bathroom. And he wouldn't open the door till he could get himself back up. And that's when they're like, it's time, right? So, but we were lucky he got to die at home still. But that morning we were taking him to hospice, and he said to me, why are you doing that? You know, because but
that's incredible.
It was an incredible story. I have a picture of him laying there with 22 of us around him. Like my brothers we all have 13 grandkids from all of us, and my other brother and I have 4 each, and we made the decision to let our children see my dad pass. And that was a hard one because I think my mom's so scared of that stuff, so she sheltered us from that. So when my grandma Charlotte died, I didn't even go up and look at her because I was so scared. But when my dad died, I did his hair and makeup, and that I would do that all over again because of that. But so it just like led up to that journey, right? But my dad wrote me a note. I gave it to my best friend and told me to please don't be scared and like do my hair and makeup for my thing. And yeah, his journey and wish. I think even when I opened my salon, everything, even when it went bad, it went good because I know he's there.
Yeah.
100%. Right.
So it's kind of like being here and living the Canadian dream. It kind of pays dividends back because we all have this feeling of giving back constantly because that's what we learned from the kindness of people that gave to us. You know what I mean?
Here's
and that's the purpose.
a little immigrant fun fact here, last moment. That's why I asked you that question. When my father, he passed away, it was a lingering Lou Gehrig's disease death. And closer to the end, he said, I want to go back. I want to die back in Pakistan. So he lived all his life here, but that final moment, for the last few months of his life, he was suggesting that maybe I should fly back. I think it's getting close now. I should go back and pass my motherland. I found that.
Yeah, we asked my dad that, and he didn't want to, and that's what he said.
There
Like
you go.
this was his home, and he wanted to be where his family could visit him too, right? Obviously, there's a different meaning to all that, but it was like he said he didn't have fond memories anymore. Like his best memories were now here, right? And that's because the development of his extended family, right? Came with 3 children to having 4 to having 13 grandchildren, 2 great-grand that he didn't get to see. But yeah, he chose to have it here. But when they told him he was terminal, he said that my last wish would be for all my kids, my 3 brothers and I, whoever else wanted to come from the grandkids, and my mom to go back to Vietnam before he died. So that's what we did. My dad wrote my tattoo on my back. It's a poem in Vietnamese, and he wrote one to all his children. He was crazy artistic and poetic, and I said, like, how can I make this, forever for me? Because he wrote it as he was dying. So I never had a tattoo. So I went and he actually came and he wrote, this is all his writing and his initials and the date, and they just tattooed over it. And it's a poem that says, like, you were given the gift to make people beautiful. Do it for love, not money. Like, do it to have that purpose. Because money comes with everything, right? But the purpose has to be strong. And that's...
I still, I don't know about you guys, and you guys can speak to this, but I struggle. I'm proud of my kids, of course, and I love the fact that they can be who they are for the most part around me, because you still want to give them their privacy. But the fact that my mother lives with me and she's watching these things, and it's very hard for her to digest. Like, she never even changed her clothing. She always wore the scarf and the long shirt and the thing, and for her to see even ripped jeans, just her jaw drops. Like, to this day, her jaw still drops, and she's like, oh, and I go, Mom, she's right in front of you. Just let her walk by first, right? Or we're walking in the mall. And I feel like telling her, trying to explain things to her at 82, she doesn't want to hear it, but yet I don't have a choice but to do that because she's living with me. I don't
so
have
you
the
can't
luxury.
change her, you can only change how you see it. That's what I learned, right?
Yeah. And I don't have the luxury of leaving either. I don't say, okay, goodbye everybody, say bye Mom, have a good day, or being that, because when you don't live with the parent, you get to be the good kid. Like, everybody, let's dress
100%.
properly, no ripped jeans, and you're like, hello Grandma, what are you doing? And all that stuff. But it doesn't work when you're living. You might as well live in your authenticity.
Yes.
As much as you can.
You have to.
As much as you can, because there's nothing else that you can. Did your kids have to do anything when they went back home? Like, did they have to change in how they spoke to grandma, how they spoke to great grandma? Because your grandmother's alive as well, right?
Yeah, my grandmother is alive, yes. So fortunately, my family is very liberal.
Okay.
They do understand that, they understand the dynamics. I mean, let me put it that way, that all these ones, they don't understand our language. Again, I wish they could speak it, but life happened. So they understand that. My son would send me videos dancing with my grandmother, with his great grandmother, and she's complaining that this music does not make sense to me, you know. And then she's like, and he's like, just dance, go. We want to have fun here, you know. They had fun with us, so they are liberal like that. They didn't have to change anything, and so they. But I do understand that on their dad's side, they have to behave in a certain way.
Yes.
But that's cultural differences. When it comes to dressing, there are things I told them that do not take this. You know, especially with the girl, you cannot take this. But it's a teenager.
What are you gonna do?
I saw pictures and I was like, that made it there.
She snuck it in.
She took it there. Goodness, you know.
Yeah.
So. Yeah,
it's a fine line you
it's
have
a
to walk,
fine
right?
line,
How about
yeah.
you, Ruby? What's your thought on that? Like telling your kids certain clothes, certain things, like we're going to grandma, grandpa's, that's a no.
Yeah, I always tell my kids there's a time and place for everything, right?
Yeah.
And it's good that they learn that when they're young.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say, you know, don't wear the crop tops. I know they're in style. I know you want to wear them. Because then they're going to do what we used to do. They're going to hide it in their backpack and put it on behind your back in the school bathroom, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, and these are things that they're going to have to learn in life because, you know, your work attire is going to be different than your vacation attire, you know, things like that. And that's kind of what I told them, that, you know, you can wear this stuff, but there's a time and place. You know, if grandpa's coming over to visit, you're not going to wear your crop top, you know, or grandma's, you know. So there's little things, you know, you just, you know, you take a second to throw on a hoodie or whatever, you know, cover up a bit. But if you're out with your friends and, you know, whatever, fine, you can wear it, right? So I think those are the things that by putting those kind of rules in place, you're kind of helping them monitor themselves and keep themselves in check, you know. So it'll just serve them better in life, I think. So, and it's a respect thing, right? And, you know, I said, you know, grandma and grandpa aren't, you know, they're from a different time. And, you know, for them, how often do you see them, first of all, right? Like, because my parents live in BC, so they don't see them that often, right? And I said that, you know, the few times out of the year that you do get to see them, you can just, you know,
You can do it.
you can do it, right?
You can wear a full length. It's okay. You can do it. No,
So and they think that's fair, you know. So, you know, again, it's a give and take, and just you know, setting those little boundaries. You know.
Do you find your parents have grown a little bit? Like maybe your kids are making this much sacrifice in terms of not doing things they normally would do. Do you think that your parents appreciate that a bit? Like, for example, I took my mom on a cruise, right?
Yeah.
And it was me and my mom, and of course we're on a cruise, so there's a lot of people wearing bikinis, and my mom was just, her mouth was open, her face was like, oh, everywhere she looked, she'd be like, oh, like all the time, and I would be like, oh my God, and it would be obvious. But the crazy thing was, every time, because my mom walks slow, she's 82, she'd go to an elevator. Those were the people that were holding the elevator, helping her in the elevator.
Yes.
She'd go to the buffet, and those were the people who are like, ma'am, can I help you? Here's a plate. Or here, I'll hold the plate, and you pour the food, right? And so after about 2 or 3 days of her continuous jaw dropping to the floor and just the challenges she's having, I did say, I go, Mom, if you notice, everybody who's helped you on this cruise are the people that you have shunned later, right? Like, oh my God, look what she's wearing. And I see that, I think you need to sort of have some self-growth and recognize that you have to stop judging people by the way that they look, because they judge you too. When you're coming in your South Asian gear and you think that you're better than them because you're all this and they're not that, they're judging you too. And you feel that. You feel it. Whether they do it or not, that doesn't matter, because they're still holding the elevator door open for you. They're still helping you with your food. One time I lost my mom on the cruise. How am I supposed to find her, right? Like she and we did our best. I did my best to make sure.
For the only fully clothed woman.
Yes, exactly.
I'm sure she's stuck out like sore thumb.
Oh my God. But it was the same people that helped her in the elevator, food, everything. I was asking him, like, hey, if you see my mom, do you see
No.
my mom? And those people were so amazing. They were like, yeah, she's sitting in the cafeteria and she's praying over something. I don't know what she was doing, but and then so they helped me. So
Yes, absolutely. And I've seen that with my parents. I've actually seen it because I've seen that they've really come a long ways, and they don't judge a book by its cover as much anymore, you know, and they are evolving with the times, and they're,
for sure.
you know, and I've seen it, you know, whereas like we'll be somewhere and there's somebody that looks completely different to what they think, you know, a young girl should look like, or whatever's in their mind, these stereotypes, and, you know, and the person's like really friendly, really nice, super helpful. And they walk away from that, and that's what they remember, right? And they're like, oh, she was lovely. She was so nice. And it's so nice to hear them say that, you know, rather than them saying, oh, did you see her hair? It was this color, or like whatever, you know? So they've come a long ways, whereas maybe 15 years ago, that would not have been the case.
That's right.
So, and I think they're also realizing that a lot of just the Western culture is a lot more accepting of them too, right? And their differences. So that it kind of goes hand in hand, right? So they feel accepted, they're more accepting of others as well.
So what would you guys say after living through your parents immigrating, or you immigrating here in Chico's case? What would be your advice, and we'll take this one by one, to other people who are immigrating to Canada and with a family? What would you say that, what advice would you give them as to what to expect or how to go about assimilating to this culture? Chico?
So I find that in as much as we didn't experience this, but a lot of people expect, for lack of a better term, money to grow on trees. You know, when they move to a different country, or especially the Western countries, there's no utopia. You still have to have the mindset of working and hustling, and make that and make it work. And so that's number one. Number two, I think people should be open-minded and know that journeys are different. Somebody would have come here carrying $1 million, and somebody has come here with absolutely nothing. The journeys are going to be different. Some people are fortunate, like I've been explaining. We could not believe our luck or our blessing. And now nobody that I've met had that kind of experience where everybody's just pouring in on them. I mean, it was just amazing, so humbling, so humbling. So people's stories are different, and you just do the best. Be open-minded with your journey, with your experiences, and take the positive. I get so frustrated, if you can allow me to say this. I get so frustrated with people who have moved to a certain country, and then 4 or 5 years down the line, they are now comfortable, they are set, they've got papers, and all this, oh, you know, back home is better. Back home is better. I would rather be back home. For me, it's this certain cockiness of arrogance and this certain unhealthy level of ungratefulness. If it's really that bad, go back. Okay, now I'm getting angry. But
That's okay.
She's actually warm.
Be grateful. You know what I mean? There's a reason why you came here, and even if you think back home is better, and let's be honest, everything is nicer when you're not. The grass is greener on the other side, you know. Because you've been here now, you've seen that, okay, Canada is actually quite expensive. Buying a house here is quite a mission and all that. Yes, it seems better because you are not back home, and yet you left that place for here,
For a better
for
place.
whatever reason. So I want people to have an attitude of gratitude in whatever experience, especially when you move. Don't come here, now that you're here, you're settled, now you're trashing the place. That really gets to me.
Yeah, I agree. Cam, what's your thoughts? Your advice to immigrants coming to Canada?
Hey, geez. I don't think you can ever expect what might come, right? You don't know exactly what you're signing on for. You see the periphery and you kind of accept that, but you can't come, let me pick my words properly here. You can't come from somewhere else and try to grind out that over here and try to yes, you can have your community and stuff like that, but you have to assimilate in this new nation that you're in, you know? Because the ripple effect of that, your children, your offspring, like, well, as my parents were doing, they were all cool just hanging around with their own relatives, but that created a lot of challenges for their children, right? Do I have a white friend or a brown friend or whatnot? So that shouldn't at all exist. You're immigrating to some place, you have to accept everything, the goods with the bads, and you have to accept that you're going to stir in another color to this paint bucket, and it's going to change a little bit. It's going to change, right? So you cannot keep rigid and, oh no, we're going to still be like this even though we're going to the other side of the planet, right?
Right.
So I think that creates a little bit of challenge. Easier said than done. What do you say to somebody who's just immigrating to Canada that, hey, get ready to assimilate hard, right? Or you're just going to cause yourself problems and you're going to cause your children problems down the road. So there is, I agree with you, Chico, the acceptance part, and be very open-minded. Yes, keep your culture, your religion, your whatever, your clothes, whatever. But don't die on that hill. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like be prepared to, I remember it was such a challenge for myself, the holidays, Christmas and stuff, right? We didn't celebrate Christmas. But the whole world did. My world did, right? My school did. My friends did. Everybody's celebrating Christmas. So that kind of put me in a weird boat. Like, how come I'm not celebrating Christmas, right? So all those kind of holidays and stuff like that, where I can see now people, they kind of pop up a tree, they kind of simulate a little bit, you're doing some Christmassy stuff. So the kids are actually well-rounded. They're not feeling that they're being left out of something. So you're making a big stew here and you're throwing in a lot of ingredients. So this is what's going to come in the end, right? So
And
that's my
Rupi, what's
thought.
your thoughts?
Well, for me, like I was born and raised here, so but I can maybe add something from the point of view of my parents, just hearing them talk and over the years, and what they've noticed is they notice that a lot of people who immigrate here, they think, like you said, Chico, that they think, oh, I wonder what's there. It must be this, gold must grow on trees and money grows on trees. I wonder what's there. It's a lot of hard work, right? And when our parents came here, they worked 2 jobs, they worked the hard labor jobs and they sacrificed a lot of things to get to where they are now. And I think sometimes people forget that is what's necessary sometimes, right? When you come to a new country and you need to be realistic when you're coming here.
That's right.
And they know people who have immigrated here, and they hear from them that, like you said, this is terrible here, and over there we only worked this many hours in a day, and then we took a nap in the afternoon, and then we did this, and it's like, yeah, well, that's there, and this is here, right? You can't compare,
Right.
and maybe there needs to be like a Canada 101 or something, like before you come here, just to clarify, and just you're changing your expectations.
Yeah.
When you come here.
Yeah.
Like I heard a story of this one guy that came here and somebody did him wrong and he's like, well, I'm just going to go beat him up. I'm going to go beat the crap out of him. And it's like, no, that's kind of illegal. You can't do that here. You will be arrested. He's like, what? And it's like, he had no idea. It's like, no, really, like you can't do that, right? So things like that, it's just learning the ways of where you're headed, the country you're coming to, and, be open to the fact that it is going to be different, probably very different, and be accepting of that.
That's right.
Yeah, be open to discovering everything, right?
Yes.
Be informative. So I have a very good example. My cousin from Vietnam came. My brother sponsored him just before COVID happened. And every time we go back home and visit, they always talk about he's so hardworking. He's such a hardworking man. He's just a little bit younger than me. Maybe a lot younger than me. But he came here. He left his family behind. They saved all the money and took whatever he needed to do the paperwork. And he was only here for a month. He couldn't take it. he was like, you guys work way too hard. Like, this is too hard. And his wife was like pleading with him, like, can you just try a little bit longer? He's like, I just can't do it. He's like,
Wow.
it's, yeah, and here we get breaks and we get lunches, and but it's just so different. Like they're so adapted to, you know, the break in between. And I think he just did the numbers of like how much he's making, and if he had to pay this and that, and how long would it take. I think they took 3 years to prepare him, and he lasted a month
Wow.
in Calgary.
And all
right?
that money and all
yeah,
that
all that
resource.
money. Yeah, she was quite upset.
And
with
he
him.
had you guys here
Yeah.
to support him and
Yeah.
help him and
and
guide him.
And he was living at my house. I told him he didn't even have to give me anything. And he's like, oh, I don't feel comfortable. And I said, he give me like $150. I don't
Yeah,
care, right?
whatever.
Like, you don't need, but, and look at the time now, right? Like, but he just couldn't take it. And he's like, he was even, I want to go work out with you. I want to eat what you eat. And he like, I just can't do this. Like,
Yeah.
you guys are strong. You guys are, you know, it's just a different world. And I think you're just so focused on that, what you could have, and look at your kids and they get to do this and they're here and there. But it wasn't like, look at the journey of our parents had to do
Yes.
all that
Yep.
to get us here. And
Yeah.
then now we're doing what we're doing to give our kids that opportunity, right? So that's where like the big picture at the end, if he saw it more clearly, came in with that vision, it might have been easier. But he didn't come in with that. He had no idea. Right? So I think that's
Yeah.
the biggest thing you could give to anybody is like really do your research, talk to everybody, and don't just talk to one person and that told you how amazing and it's such a party out here, right?
Yeah.
But there's just so much more, and be open to discovering that and communicating that, and that you'll get that it is hard, that you'll just get the tools that you need to show up and get there.
So I think this episode, The Canadian Dream of Immigrants, is really about us and what we inherited from our parents. Even though our parents may not have fully acclimated to Canadian culture, I think that we have been able to do so, at least for our children. And I think we learned a lot from them, whether it was the value of hard work or culture and religion or whatever it is that they wanted to impose upon us. I think we learned enough from them. So learning what they did when they came here and the people that helped them, like for example, Chico and the lady that helped you with your winter clothing, or Linda and the lovely lady that helped her acclimate to all of the different sports and all of the different activities that your kids or that you guys are supposed to be in. I think that those things really count. And I think that the real Canadian foundation is kindness. It really is kindness and giving back and paying it forward. And I think we've all inherited that, and that's why we all call ourselves proud Canadians. So I want to thank you so much, everyone, for being here, and we'll catch you here again on another episode of the Gen Xperience with Aisha.
You can overcome any problem that comes your way by faith. Life is hard, I know. Bring it on, let it show that the love wasn't all the way. When you feel like giving up and the love coming. When you feel you ain't enough and the love wash over. When you don't know where to turn, I'll be standing there and I'll tell you it'll be